Hey everybody, it's Adam Bushell and I'm delighted to be talking to you and the British Music Vault. Such great work they're doing, so yeah, very excited. Yeah, so earliest memories of music. So it would have been around, I was probably 3 or 4 years old. We had a piano and my dad used to knock around on the piano. He was not a musician, but he loved his music, and he was into sort of modern jazz, MJQ, that sort of thing, Errol Garner. He also was playing Errol Garner jazz records, and I remember him sort of knocking around on the piano, and he always used to talk about the parties that they used to have back in the day when he was younger, and the entertainment was you used to carry the piano around from people to people's houses, and people used to play the piano, and you used to have a sing-song and drink beer, and so there was all that sort of thing going on, and he used to play piano. And then I've got this vivid memory, I think I would have been about 4, and he got a sort of what was called a music centre. So it's basically a turntable and you know, and a tape deck. A great big thing, this Sony thing. It'd probably be worth a lot of money now. The beautiful old thing, that sort of hi-fi gear. And so we used to play records on that. I remember a record, Floyd Kramer on the Rebound. I remember that being played time and time again. And I suppose the 2 albums that really stuck with me from when I was really young was Never Forever by Kate Bush. That was probably the first album that I heard. And I've been a lifelong Kate Bush fan because of that ever since. And another one we used to play was Hot August Night by Neil Diamond. So that sort of really started fascinating me about music, and Mum and Dad used to sort of tell me about music and the bands, and so it was always around. And then I suppose I got into drums quite by accident, but I can remember vividly how it happened. I would have been about 7. It was my cousin's wedding in Worcester Park, and I remember the drummer. There was a band, and I remember the drum kit, and I remember what it looked like. It was like a walnut brown drum kit, 3 toms up the top, 3 up top. And I remember looking at it and being quite fascinated by it, but not really knowing why. And then a friend of my dad's, one of his friends, we used to go around there for sort of Christmas or whatever it was, for a party and a few drinks. And I remember probably around about the same age, we went over there, and his son, my dad's friend's son, was also a drummer, and he had his drum kit sort of all in pieces in cardboard boxes. And I remember vividly looking at a snare drum and going, you know, and just being really excited about it. And I think it was the sort of geometry of the drum set, you know, the sort of perfect circles of the kit that I was really drawn towards. And the look of the instrument is just so, even now, it's really exciting to me. I don't know why, but it is. So that was probably up to the time I was 9 or 10, and then I started playing on surfaces with knitting needles and things like that. Playing on the kitchen stools with knitting needles. I started going out on the weekend, going to music shops, starting to look at drum kits, and I'd buy drumsticks with pocket money, and then I could come home and, you know, the excitement of buying a pair of drumsticks. I didn't have any drums, but it was just that I could play with these drumsticks and start tapping out rhythms. And when I was 14, I got my first drum kit, and that was a real shock. I got it from a shop called Bell Music in Surbiton, which isn't there anymore. And it was such a surprise because we'd gone out that day. I was getting a haircut, and I heard my dad I overheard him talking to the hairdresser guy about drums and drumming and something like that. Next thing we know, we were in Sutton Music, and my dad's saying to me, "What do you think? We're going to get you a drum kit. Would you like a drum kit?" And I really couldn't believe it. It was such a surprise. And they had a drum kit in there in Sutton Music, and it was an old Tama kit, but it was cobbled together, and it was a second-hand thing. And my dad said to me, "What do you think? Shall we get it?" It was £250. And I By this time, I was a bit of an aficionado. I was getting all the drum magazines. I was getting Rhythm magazine every month. And I said, Dad, I don't think it's worth the money. And I was so disappointed. We came away from there with no drum kit. And then my mum says, is there anywhere else we could go? And by this time, I'd basically been in Bell Music every weekend, going to see this drum kit that they had in there under the lights, which was a black Premier APK drum kit. It was the one that was on the podium in the shop. And I said, well, there is Bell Music in Surbiton. So Dad says, come and then let's go over and have a look. So we go in there and Mum is looking at all these other drum kits. There was a Hohner drum kit in there. There was I think it was a Heyman drum kit, a few other brands in there, and all nice kits, you know, and Mum's looking at them. And Dad says to me, go and sit behind that one, and points to the black APK, the Premier Royale. Go and sit behind that. And I said, Dad, no, you can't, Dad. It's up, you know, go and sit behind it. So I'm kind of sitting behind it like the kit like I am now. And then I see him talking to the guy, and he's talking a bit of business. And he comes over to me and says, it's yours. And that was it. That completely changed my life. I still don't think I've been as excited about anything in my life to this day than I was when I got that drum kit, because it was like the pinnacle of everything I ever wanted. And I think Mum and Dad were worried that it was going to be a bit of a 5-minute wonder with me, but I was completely absorbed by it. I didn't know how to play it. I didn't know how to play the bass drum. I'd just been doing this with drumsticks. I wasn't really aware of what a bass drum was supposed to do. And my sister, who was quite a good pianist at the time, she's about 18 months older than me, she got behind the kit when we got it home, and she was much better than me. She had much more natural ability than I did. But anyway, I was just so absorbed by it. I was eaten up by it. And then I was fortunate to get lessons with a local guy called Mike Osborne. Great drummer, Mike, great teacher. He's still playing now. He's a very busy musician, fantastic guy. Hey Mike, if you're watching. And yeah, Mike was brilliant for me. So I had 2 or 3 years with him, and he sort of really started showing me, how to play rudiments, rhythms, time, opening my eyes to different drummers, different styles. I've still got some of his old notes that he gave me today. I've still got some of them. And then he said to me, if you want to take it further, you need to go and see Bob Armstrong. And Bob was widely regarded as probably the best drum teacher in the country at that time, and had taught and was teaching some of the top professionals. So I got in touch with Bob. He had a long waiting list. I could only go on a Saturday, so I had to wait. And a few months later, I got a call saying, we've got a 12 o'clock on a Saturday every 2 weeks. Are you interested? So I travelled all the way over to Hornchurch from Surrey. We were living in Surrey at the time. And 2 hours on the train and the tube. And I went in there and I had 2 hours with Bob. And again, that changed my life. And I realised that, and it wasn't a done deal that Bob would take you as a student. He had to be reassured that you were going to put in the time and the effort and not mess him about. So on the way back, it was basically like I'd fallen down to earth with a bump. I thought I was pretty good, by this time. I was 17, I was in local bands, I'd had the lessons with Mike Osborne, and I was really getting there. And all my mates were saying, oh, you're great, you're brilliant, And then I go and see Bob, and that's it. Kind of, no, you're not brilliant. You're in the swamp. So on the way home, I was thinking very seriously, if I do this, I've got to do it. And I said to Mum and Dad, I've really come crashing down to earth. I'm nowhere near where I need to be. And I really want to go for it. So for the next 7 years, I was with Bob. And again, amazing. It just really showed, it took me from sort of looking at drums very narrow band to opening my mind to all this different stuff, all these different players, all these different styles, and what drumming could be. And fascinating experience. And Bob was a wonderful guy, sadly no longer with us, but he really just taught me how to play drums properly, and just reinforced my love of the instrument. And that took me I was with Bob from 17 till I was 24. And by that time, I'd sort of had to sort of go to work. I had to make a living. So when I left school at 16, and I went to work for a company called Sandy Brown Associates, which was an engineering mechanical services company. And the boss of that company was a friend of my dad's, so I got a job in the company. And I was working with them, and I realised that I wanted to get qualified. I wanted to get a degree. I'd always liked the idea of going to university ever since I was very, very young. I always thought I wanted to get a degree. So I managed to convince the bosses at Sandy Brown's to put me through a degree course, which they did. So all the time I was working there, I was being allowed to do this degree. And then towards the end of it, I got wind of the fact that a very well-known guitarist that I knew and had heard of, a guy called Phil Hilborne, was potentially needing a drummer because his drummer had a tour or something, and his drummer was a guy called Pete Riley. Pete's a very dear friend, and I recognised Pete's name because I'd seen it in Bob's newsletter. Bob Armstrong used to do a monthly newsletter, and within that, it had a congratulations to list. And I remember seeing Pete's name. Congratulations to Pete Riley, because he's got the gig with, I think it was Jan Serka, another great guitarist. And so I phoned Bob and I said, can I have Pete's number? I got Pete's number and I phoned him and I said, I've heard through, I can't remember who it was, but someone told me that you play for Phil Hilborne and you need a dep. Is that true? And he said, yeah, it is true. So he said, come down, we're playing a cartoon in Croydon. Come down and see us on Saturday. So I went down and mind blown, that band, Phil Hilborne, Andy Frost, Pete Riley, it was astonishingly good. Again, another life-changing moment. So great. And I'd sort of been knocking around in local bands and I saw those guys. Wow. And then I got, so Phil said, I'll meet Phil, and he said, well, do you want to do it then? Do you want to do some gigs? I was like, yeah. I was still working for Sandy Brown's at the time. So I asked them to take some time off. I had a month's unpaid leave to learn the set. So I learned it as best I could. And then I started gigging with Phil and depping for Pete. And eventually it got to the point where I was able to stop doing the engineering stuff and pick up the gigs with Phil and really throw myself into my drumming. And working with Phil really changed my life. He was the one that started really pulling me up and demanding more and more and not, just wanting it to be better and better what I was doing. So that really pushed me along. And then I was gigging with Phil, and that started opening up all sort of manner of new things. I started meeting other musicians and guitarists and bands and started getting calls. And I really sort of started getting involved in music full time, which was always what I wanted to do. Even though in the meantime, I was fortunate enough to get this engineering degree as something to fall back on, which I got. But I was always living this double life. And then finally, I managed to make the move to doing music full time. Yeah, so musical influences. Well, since those early days, and I was listening to some of the records like Kate Bush or Neil Diamond through Mum and Dad, I really started getting into rock music, and that was my thing. So thinking back to when I was 12, 13, it was all about Iron Maiden and AC/DC. And the first Iron Maiden record I got was an album called Peace of Mind. And on that record, that's Nico McBrain's first record with the band. And there's an opening track on Peace of Mind called Where Eagles Dare. And what an introduction to Maiden fans for their new drummer, Nico McBrain. It starts with this monumental sort of snare, tom, fill. That's the opening of the album. Incredible. So when I first heard that, I was like, wow, amazing. I was an absolute die-hard Iron Maiden fan. And a good mate of mine was a really die-hard AC/DC fan, so we were just listening to Iron Maiden and AC/DC, and then all those bands that surrounded the rock and metal sort of genre, so got into Metallica and Lars and Megadeth and Slayer and bands like that. We were eating it up when we were in our teens. We absolutely loved it. And then round about the time that I started, well, I suppose probably earlier than when I saw Bob Armstrong, but when I was having lessons with Mike Osborne, he brought in this play-along thing, this Dave Weckl play-along thing. It was called the Contemporary Drummer Plus One. And he put it on, and it all came with all the charts and everything. It was fundamentally a sort of like a backing track package, all different styles, and you've got the drum charts and everything. Really good learning package. And he put it on, and that was the first time I heard Dave Weckl. Incredible. I mean, again, that's like a very, very different style of drumming. That's jazz fusion. And then a good mate of mine at the time at school was, you know, we were sort of listening to the same music, and then he was massively into guitar playing and practicing guitar and wanted to get great. I was the same on drums. And we sort of looked at each other and said, we should get into jazz. We need to go and buy some jazz records. So we went up to Tower Records at Piccadilly Circus. It shows you how long ago it is. And walked into that sort of first floor, I think it was, which is the whole jazz section. And he didn't know what record to buy, and I didn't know what record to buy. We just didn't know anything about this genre of music. So I saw a name, Chick Corea. And I thought, I've heard of Chick Corea. So I went to the Chick Corea, and there was an album in there called Eye of the Beholder, which is the Chick Corea Electric Band. And so I bought that CD. I think I bought it on cassette, actually. It was cassette. And Dom bought a Larry Carlton record. He got them home. And I listened to that Chick Corea record, Eye of the Beholder, and wow. I mean, you can't get further away from Iron Maiden if you tried. But the drumming, right from the start, beautiful, stunning, accurate, chops, groove, everything. So that's it. I'm into Dave Weckl now, and Chick Corea and jazz fusion. That took me into a whole different realm of music. And by the time I started with Bob Armstrong, everything dropped into place, because it was all about Weckl. It was Vinnie Colaiuta, it was Steve Gadd, it was Tony Williams, it was Harvey Mason. All those fantastic drummers of the 70s and 80s. And I just started getting into that and listening to those recordings as much as possible and trying to copy those guys very badly as much as I possibly could. So that broadened out my musical interests. I still absolutely love rock music. We've got a night of classic rock coming up at the venue in a couple of weeks. I can't wait, and we're playing Dio records, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Van Halen, and a lot of that rock stuff as well. When I was on the road with Phil Hilborne, we did a lot of that stuff. So it's still really powerful. But I was fortunate to be able to listen and be exposed to all those different kind of styles and those different drummers, and it all goes into the pot, I suppose. So I think round about the time I was doing all that, and I'm really, really busy with Phil, and I was starting to play with more and more people, and through that connection, ultimately, I've played with a lot of really great guitarists. Guys like Greg Wright, who played with Michael Jackson, Richie Kotzen, Cole Verheyen, Supertramp, Jeff Whitehorn, Bad Company, and The Who. Jamie Humphries, obviously Phil. So loads and loads of really fantastic players, guitar players that I've played with, and bass players, and fantastic musicians. And I wound up playing in a band called Keltus, which was signed to Sony Records. And we were fortunate. We toured with people like Sheryl Crow and Paul Carrick when I was in that band. Keltus were the McManus brothers, who had a band called the Mama's Boys. Great rock band back in the 80s that I used to listen to. I wound up playing with those guys. And not too long after, I started playing in a band called Freak Power with Ashley Slater. I'm still playing Freak Power today. We do quite a lot on the continent. and all manner of artists in between, really. Through the Ashley connection, I wound up doing a few gigs with Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. That was fantastic, because that was a bit of a pinch me moment. All those old Motown tunes that were hers, and worked with some great producers. We had a record in the charts with Braun Reynolds. We had I wound up doing a live show with Will Young, Jose Feliciano. Did a couple of live gigs with him. So all manner of sort of different styles, people, genres. And then I got into the music education thing. Started to become more of a thing in the mid-90s when I was in my mid-20s. I was doing a lot of this different kind of work, and there was a music college that had just opened in Guildford. It was called the ACM, the Academy of Contemporary Music, and I think that opened in something like 94, 95. I might have got that date wrong, but anyway, that's when I started doing a bit of work down there. And that's when I met a guy called Bruce Dickinson, who was the education director down there. So I carried on, and I was really into teaching. I thought, and I still have this, I've always thought teaching is a wonderful thing to do if you can do it, because I think for me, it was always a case of, if you can teach it, you know your stuff. And to be able to teach something, and teach something well, you've got to know it. You've got to know it inside and out. And I always had that attitude towards teaching, and I always wanted to teach for that reason, because for me it was like a badge, it was like a tick. This guy's good because he can teach it, and he can teach it well. And when I started teaching at ACM and standing up in front of a group of drummers and showing them stuff, and I really felt very much at home doing that, and I really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. So it was shortly after then that I moved away. I was living in South London at the time, and I moved down to Brighton, just outside of Brighton. And independently, I didn't know that Bruce, the education director at ACM, had also moved down this way. And it was Jamie Humphreys, who's another fantastic guitarist, very good friend of mine, who phoned me up and said, Bruce and a few others are starting a new music college in Brighton. Do you want to get involved? And I said, yeah, sounds great. And that music college was called BIM, which back then was known as the Brighton Institute of Modern Music. So I called up Bruce, we had a meeting, and he said, do you want to head up the drum department and be the head of drums at BIM? And I was like, yeah, I really do. And he said, great, well, you've got to write the syllabus for the technical development courses, the session styles courses, the sight reading, you've got to do it all. And I said, great, that's right. So I spent effectively about the next 18 months to 2 years handwriting these notes. And I had quite a good hand, because when I was engineering back in as in my teenage years, I was on the drawing board, drawing up ductwork and heating and ventilation systems, and you had to, that was basically old-fashioned draftsmanship before CAD, and you had to draw and you had to print. So I developed quite a good printing hand. So I did all these quite nicely formatted, handwritten course notes, and it took me a long time, but I did it. It's great. So that was the notes. That was basically the drum notes at BIM. And so for the next however many years I was teaching drums at BIM, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I was still continuing to do a lot of gigs, and I started writing for Rhythm magazine, which was that was a real moment for me, because back in the day when I was a teenager, even before I got the drum kit, I was buying Rhythm magazine every month, and that was the Bible. That was the thing, and you saw all the drummers and everything in Rhythm magazine. So I started writing for them, which was great. And so teaching at BIM, loving it, lots of gigs, was really, really happy. And eventually BIM was kind of getting bigger and bigger, and I became tutor leader was my position, and I slowly sort of became more involved in the management there, to the point where I became the principal of the college in around, I think it was 2012, something like that. It's a long time ago now, 14, 15 years ago. And I stayed with BIM till around 2014, 2015. And I I left then. I went back to ACM for about 18 months. I was education director there, and then principal. And Bruce was there as well. He'd come back to do a bit of consultancy work. And basically Bruce and I had kept in touch all these years, and we worked together at BIM. And even when Bruce left in 2010, 2011, we were still in touch. Then we hooked up again when we went back to ACM for a little while. And it was in around 2017, we looked at each other and we said, the industry's fundamentally changed, and we think that we need to start a new music college to recognise that and recognise how most musicians make their living today, which is the sort of portfolio career approach, supporting the DIY ethic, the do-it-yourself musician. And that's where Waterbear came about. Bruce and I had a coffee together on Brighton seafront sometime in 2017, and we said, let's start another college. So we decided to start Waterbear. And throughout all that time, we'd still kept active in our musical projects, but we were both intrinsically involved and linked to music education as well. So we'd had a lot of experience throughout the ACM and BIM years. And then being on the road and gigging and seeing it firsthand, we just thought that's a really great thing to bring together, and that's the founding principle of the college. And we opened the doors of Waterbear in 2018 in Brighton, and we started with about 35 people on a master's course and about 5 people on a BA honours course, small pilot group. And it's grown steadily since then, and now we've got 2 colleges. We've got college in Brighton, we've got a college in Sheffield, we've got the online programs, and we've got about, this September we'll have about 1,100 students at Waterbear. So it's gone fantastically well. And a key part of that is our work to support live music. And again, that's so close to Bruce and I's heart. We've launched a campaign this year called Keeping Music Live. And one of the things we do at Waterbear is, as well as the college and the degree courses, and we're validated by Falmouth University, they approve all our courses. We also have music venues as well. So when the opportunity is there, we will take on a music venue and we'll keep it as a music venue. And that basically enshrines that place to keep being a grassroots music venue to support new music coming through, young people being able to play. And as we speak, we've now got 2 music venues in Brighton. So we've got one on the beachfront, and the second one we've just acquired it used to be called the Latest Music Bar. And that's going to be called the Waterbear Music Bar. And it's just a really, really brilliant thing to ensure that these venues can keep operating. Of course, fantastic for our students as well. You've got somewhere to play. Students can hire the venue space for free, put on their own shows. It really just provides great opportunity. So Waterbear's going very, very well. But in amongst all of that is I'm still really busy playing drums. We've got a classic rock night coming up next month at the Waterbear venue, which is great. We're going to be playing lots of old, Iron Maiden, Van Halen, Judas Priest, Dio, stuff that's really close to my heart. So that's going to be really great fun. And I'm still playing with Freak Power. We do quite a lot of gigs in Europe, so that's really great with Ashley Slater and the guys. That's a really good band. And I play in a band called The Strides, which is Jeff Whitehorn, Jeff Martin, Andy Robinson. So really great guys, great heritage there, and that's a really nice band that I'll play with those guys now and again. So still doing a lot musically, and I do some recordings from here as well. Do some keep recording for people as and when that comes around. So yeah, lots going on. So I think where the music industry's headed. There's a lot in the press, and there has been recently, about obviously streaming is huge now, and how money is being made in music. live sales are enormous. You know how much it costs to go and see a band these days, a big artist. That's an awful lot of money is being made in live music. An awful lot of money is being made by streaming services, not so much by the artist. So I think that's always under scrutiny, how much the artist will be paid for that. But music is so powerful, and certainly in terms of people coming in who are younger, who want to, for example, come to Waterbear and do a music degree, we're not seeing that slow up. And that's really, really reassuring. And I think the news around AI and potentially big tech taking artists' rights and being able to use their music, this mustn't happen. And this is one of the reasons why keeping music live is so important, because music is about people. AI, there will always be a use for it. It's an aggregator, it's a tool, and it's a very clever one. But music is all about people and the interaction of people and the feeling of people and everything that the human experience is. It's art, and a computer can't do that or feel that in an authentic way. It's a human endeavour. And that's why we have to preserve live music, people interacting, people playing together, being able to see a live experience. You can't download a live experience. This is why live music it's making more money than ever before. And the creative industries in the UK are a huge, huge money earner for the economy. Massive, massive revenue generated by the creative industries. So it's very important we do everything we can to preserve that. And that's why we've got this campaign running. This is why we get live music venues. And we want to keep doing it. So we've got some really big plans for developing our Brighton College and the Sheffield College as well. We don't have a music venue up there currently, but we are very close to being able to announce something. So that's really, really good. And we're looking to grow Waterbear as well and to take it to more places. And as long as there's that demand there and students are happy, we're very happy to keep doing it. It just seems to be a really great thing. There's great music coming out of the college. Some fantastic artists are getting some really good gigs now, some great support slots. They're getting good exposure. And you see it, young people understand more of what it means to be a musician in today's music industry and what you have to do. It's not just about being able to play. That's clearly very important, and that hasn't changed, and that will always be the case. But you've got to be able to play. You've got to understand how to market yourself, how to think of yourself as a brand, how to have different strings to your bow. If it was 1985 and I was talking to a room full of drummers, I would say all you have to do is keep practicing your drums and get out there and play, because there's loads of places you can play, and that's how you'll get gigs, and then your diary will fill up and that'll be great, and then you'll get some studio dates. But today it's different. The landscape's changed, and if I'm talking to a room full of drummers today, I say, well, learn how to play. It's a prerequisite. You've got to know how to play, but also learn how to record yourself. Learn how to make yourself sound good. So then you can do sort of online sessions or set up your own home studio. Learn how to edit video. That's a really good skill. Drummers seem to be really good at editing video. A lot of drummers I know are also video editors, and it's because they can see the timing with the audio, and it's a real thing. So it's a good thing for drummers to do. It's all about having more strings to your bow these days, which is far more exciting, really. And you're going to meet more people that way. Music is a people industry. It's a networking industry. And the more strings to the bow that you've got, the more activities you're involved within music, the better it's going to be for your career. So this is exactly how we talk about that at Waterbear, and long may that continue. And I think personally, I'm still as excited today about playing drums than I ever was, which is brilliant. And I'm still in touch with a lot of the guys that I've played with over the years. And so yeah, drumming, music, although the landscape and the industry around it may change, I think it's something fundamental about it that's enduring and lasts and doesn't change. So yeah, long may that continue. There you go.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Adam.